Okay, so this is for my Algebra 2 students, so this would be for Jaden and Allison. If you guys are both still there, I'm not sure if you've already gotten out or whatever, but so you should have some notes for systems of equations, and we're going to solve these systems of equations by substitution. You're not going to have it written out like this. You're going to have a printout, and it says a system of equations. And then it has exactly all this stuff that I wrote, but it's printed out nicely. I just didn't have a chance, an opportunity to actually print it off, so I just had to write it by hand. So first of all, just to give you an idea of what this is really, this is a line, right? This is an equation of a line. It's just not written in slope-intercept form. This is also an equation of a line. So to solve a system means you're trying to find where these two lines intersect. Okay, so we're trying to figure out where these two lines intersect. So this is your solution to a system of equations. So there is a way where you can graph it and just find the intersection. That's a simple way, but that's one way. But then there's also several algebraic ways that you can find it. But at the end of all of them, your answer should be a point, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the solution to the system is the intersection point. Okay, but today we're not doing it by graphing, we're doing it algebraically. Okay, so if you have two lines that are set up like this, they're not in slope-intercept form, therefore they're not easy to graph in a graphing calculator, right? Because you have to have it in y equals form to actually put it in the calculator. So that wouldn't be the easiest route, okay? I'm not saying this is also the easiest route, but it is a way. So substitution is like this. So I'm going to choose one equation and solve for x or y. So I guess I'll choose this one, this equation, and I guess I'm going to solve for x. Okay, so I'm going to put this here, negative x plus 5y equals 6. Okay, well, if I want to solve for x, that means that I have to move this term, and I got to move that negative. So the first thing that I'm going to move is the adding subtracting term, right, which would be the 5y. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 5y from both sides. These can't combine, so I kind of write it off to the side, so I know that that's not going to combine. I'm going to cancel this out, that's 0. I'm going to put negative x rewritten there equals negative 5y plus 6. And then the last thing that I have to do is I have to get rid of this negative. So I can just do that by dividing by negative 1 on both sides. Which all that's going to do is just change the sign of both of these terms, as well as the x. So this will end up being x equals 5y minus 6. Okay, so I have successfully solved this equation for x. And it's not a number, but that's okay. I solved for x, and that's what I needed to do. So that's the first step. So from there, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to plug this value right here. I'm going to plug that in to the other equation. So let me write out my other equation. My other equation was 7, and instead of x, I'm going to put in this whole expression here. So I'm going to put a parentheses, a big parentheses here, because that's where the x would go. And then plus y equals negative 6. Okay, and like I said, instead of x, we're going to substitute in this expression that we found is equal to x. Like that. And now we're going to solve for y. So from here, the equation to solve for the variable. Okay, so we've plugged it in. So our next step is going to be to solve for the variable. So I'm going to rewrite this here. So now we're going to solve it. So I have to simplify both sides before I can start solving. So I'm going to have to distribute this 7 into the parentheses. That's going to make this 7 times 5y is 35y. 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. And then I'm going to rewrite the y. I got to combine like terms because I got two y terms. So 35y plus positive y, that's going to be 36y minus 42 equals negative 6. And now at this point, this is completely simplified right here, and this has always been simplified on that side. I want to get y by itself. That means that the 36 has to move and the 42 have to move. I'm always going to start with the adding subtracting term first. So that would be the 42. So I'm going to do the opposite, right? I'm doing inverse operations. So I'm going to add 42 to both sides. I'm going to rewrite this. On this side I have the 36y left because this canceled out, right, because that was 0. And then on this side, 42 minus 6, or negative 6 plus 42, that would be, let's see, that would be 38, right? No, wait, 36. Yeah, 36. Wait, hold on. I'm having a... Okay, let's see this. 42 minus 6 is 12. Minus 6 is 6. Yeah, 36, sorry. Okay, I just want to make sure. So 36. Yeah. And so from there, I'm going to just divide both sides by 36. And I will divide that. That'll give me 1 on this side. So that's y equals 1. So I finally got one of the pieces of the puzzle, right? It was kind of some work, but we got it. And then now I have to get the other piece, right? So I'm going to plug the number that I get for whatever variable I chose, or actually the one that I didn't choose. Plug that number into the equation for step 1 to find the other value. So now I can take this and plug it into this equation, or really either one of these, really, and then solve for the x. So I'm going to plug it into the first one just because. So I'm going to put in negative x plus 5, but instead of y, I'm going to put 1 equals 6. And I'm just going to solve for x from here. So this is going to be negative x plus 5 equals 6. And then if I want to solve for x, I got to get rid of the 5. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. That gives me negative x equals 1. And then I'm going to divide by negative 1 on both sides. And that will lastly give me negative 1. So my answer here is going to be negative 1, 1. So I know that my solution to the system is negative 1, 1. Okay. You don't have to write that out, but I just wanted to write it out. This is your answer right there. So the x is negative 1 and the y part was 1. Okay, so we're going to do that a few more times, so you can go over it. I mean, it's a video, so you can go back and even, do it again if you need to. I'm going to go to the next page, or I guess to the example problems. So we got here, let that focus, x minus y equals 7 and 4x plus 4y equals 4. So first step, I'm going to solve for one of the variables, which is going to give me an expression, right? It's not going to actually give me a number first. So I'm going to just use this first one. So we have x minus y equals 7. If I want to solve for x, I can get rid of this y term, right? I want to get x by itself. That means the y term has to go. I'm going to add y to both sides. But you have to be able to know that on this side I can't combine the 7 and the y. So this becomes x equals y plus 7 or 7 plus y. Either way it's the same. We just usually put the variable first when we write it. It's just kind of a standard way that we do that. Okay, so I have this expression. That's my first step. Second step, I'm going to plug that into the second the second equation. So my x is now y plus 7. So when I rewrite this, this is going to be 4 times y plus 7 equals, oh wait, no, sorry, 4 times y plus 7 plus, oops, sorry, plus 4y equals 4. So you can see that this would have been the x, right? But instead I put the y plus 7. Okay, so then next step is I'm going to solve that. So I got to first simplify this side. So I got to distribute and combine my terms, all that good stuff. 4 times y is 4y, 4 times 7 is 28. And then I bring down the 4y, rewrite this. I can combine my 4y's. It's going to give me 8y plus 28 equals 4. And then from there, I'm just going to solve for y. I'm going to subtract 28 from both sides because that's my adding subtracting number. Always do that first. I want to get y by itself. And I'm left with 8y equals negative 24. Lastly, I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides. And that will give me, actually I'm going to put this up here. And that will give me y equals negative 3. So that's part of my answer, but it's not the full answer, right? So at this point, step 4, I got to plug that into the first equation again to solve for the actual, well, no, to solve for x, the second part of the solution. So I'm going to write x minus, and instead of putting y, I'm putting in negative 3 equals 7. So just know that this comes from this, right? But instead of y, I put in what we solved for y to be, which is negative 3. So let me go ahead and simplify and solve this. So if I simplify this side, it's going to be x plus 3 equals 7, because anytime you're subtracting a negative number, that's addition. At this point, this is a simple one-step equation, right? So if I want to get x by itself, I just subtract 3 from both sides. And that will leave me with 4. And now I have both the pieces, but I got to put those pieces together to give my solution. So remember, a point has the x first, so it's going to be 4, negative 3. So my final answer here is 4, negative 3. Okay. Let's see, as far as steps goes, that was all our steps, right? 3 solved, 4 plugged in. Yep, so just 4 steps. Alright, so let's go to the next one, number 2. I'm going to do number 2, and then I'm going to let you guys do 3 and 4. Okay, so same thing on number 1. Sorry, on number 2, our first step is we're going to solve for a variable. I guess I'm just going to solve for x again. So I'm going to do negative 6x plus 8y equals 4. You could solve for y if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to solve for y just to be different. So I'm going to solve for y this time. So that means if I want to get the y by itself, I got to get rid of the 6x term and the 8. So I'm always going to get rid of the adding subtracting term first, so that would be this one. So I'm going to do the opposite of this to both sides to move it over. So I add 6x to both sides, I'll rewrite the 8y. This becomes 6x plus 4 on this side. And then I will divide by 8 on both sides. Since there's 2 terms, I divide both of those terms, because you're dividing the whole side. Okay, so then y is going to be equal to 6/8, which can be reduced to 3/4 x, and 4 divided by 8 can be reduced to 1/2. Okay, so that's my y. That's my expression for y. So second step, is I am going to plug that in to the second part of this. So my second equation is negative 7x minus 8, and for my y, I'm going to plug in what I solved for the y. So this is going to become negative 8 times 3/4 x plus 1/2 equals 22. And before I can solve for x, I'm going to have to simplify, so I'm going to have to distribute first. Remember this, if there's a negative in front, that's a negative 8, so you're multiplying negative 8 times 3/4. If you were to put this in the, you could put this in the calculator, just make sure your fractions are in parentheses when you do that. But if I did this by hand, 8 goes into 4 once, or 4 goes into 8 once, actually sorry, twice. So I would put 1 here and a 2 here. So this actually becomes 2 times 3, which is negative 6. So this would be negative 6x. Negative 8 times 1/2 would be negative 4. And you combine your x terms. So that's negative 7 and negative 6. So negative 7 minus 6, that's going to be a large negative number, so that's going to be negative 13x minus 4 equals 22. At this point, this is just a two-step equation. If I want to solve for x, I got to get rid of both of these numbers. I'm going to get rid of the adding subtracting term first, and then your multiplying dividing number. So inverse operations means I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I'm going to have negative 13x here equal to 26. Then finally I divide by negative 13. And I'm going to find that my x is equal to negative 2. Because 26 divided by negative 13 is negative 2. So at that point I have my, I just have my x. So I'm going to have to plug this back in to figure out my y. So I know it's a lot of work just for one piece of the puzzle, but we're going to have to figure out the rest of this puzzle. So I have my x. I'm going to need to take some space here. I should have started over here, but it's okay. Just going to do some wonkiness here. Okay, so for step 3, I have my x, and I'm just going to plug that back into the first equation and then solve for y. So I got negative 6, and then instead of x, I'm putting negative 2 plus 8y equals 4. Okay, notice that is the first equation, but instead of x, I put negative 2. I'm going to simplify this and solve. So this is going to be positive 12 plus 8y equal to 4. If I want to solve for y, I got to get rid of, that means that I want y by itself on this side. Got to get rid of the 12 and the 8. Adding subtracting number goes first. This is a positive 12, so that's adding. So the opposite would be subtracting. So I get 8y equal to negative 8. Divide by 8. That's going to give you y equals negative 1. So my solution is negative 2, negative 1. Okay, so I want you guys to do the same thing for 3 and 4 on your own. Alright? And if you have any questions, feel free to, if you would like to, you can email me. It's just michelle.briggs@daytonisd.net. Okay, thanks guys.